The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, the 4th of February, episode 144 here on NOK Network. The video's news podcast focus on psychedelic medicine being reported in mainstream media. Shout out to the guys at Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario for the awesome intro track, originally recorded by Blues, with some customized changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Alvarius, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He is our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And while that sounds like fun, park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick that toad.
Don't lick that toad.
No, sustainable harvesting.
So it's nice to have you back.
Yeah, I missed last week. Life gets crazy around here sometimes. And with the snow, it kind of took me away. I needed some sleep time and, couldn't function anymore that day.
Well, Bufos has given us a great story to start out with today. And that will help you get your day functioning for tomorrow because this is a good article. This is written by I.ca. I believe that's a Canadian thing, huh? And its conservative MLA was let go from psychedelic therapy company. Donald Gloyer says he hired Jody Tour, believing she had an MD, and this is written by Michelle Gaiman.
Interesting. Before she was elected as the MLA for Langley Willbrook last fall, Jody Tour misrepresented her medical credentials to get a job as chief medical officer for a local company that offered psychedelic therapy for people struggling with mental health. In a piece published yesterday, the Thai did a deep dive into Tour's medical and academic credentials and found no record that she had earned an MD degree. An expert in medical information, the Thai spoke with further characterized and a non-accredited university where Tour got her PhD as a diploma mill. Tour's LinkedIn profile says she worked as chief medical officer for Conscious Mind Labs from January 2021 to February of 2022. Conscious Mind Labs, Inc. offers ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, psilocybin, and MDMA-assisted therapy, clinical counseling, neuropathic medicine, and registered massage therapy at its Vancouver clinic, Conscious Mind Clinic. Company founder and co-owner Donald Gavrot said his clinic contracts prescribers to provide psilocybin or MDMA treatments for eligible patients through the Health Canada's Special Access Program. When the Thai checked with Health Canada, a spokesperson said Health Canada does not disclose which practitioners have been approved to access psilocybin or MDMA through its Special Access Program, or otherwise known as SAP. Individual healthcare providers can make requests to SAP on behalf of their patients, and withholding this information protects patients' confidentiality, they say. However, the spokesperson did say that all healthcare practitioners can prescribe the intranasal spray Spravato, which contains ketamine, for the treatment-resistant depression, and that no healthcare practitioner accessing SAP has listed Conscious Minds Clinic on its application. Health Canada did confirm that it had granted approval for Conscious Minds to run a clinical trial looking into how psilocybin can be used in group therapy. Well, that's interesting. I've never heard of that spray.
The Thai asked Jody Tour and BC Conservatives to speak with her to clarify her credentials and respond to her former boss's allegation, but neither responded. The Thai spoke with Guavera via email after he declined a phone interview. Guavera said he met Tour a year before he launched his business. At the time, Tour had a beautiful wellness clinic in White Rock called Temperance Health and Wellness. And Guavera said it appeared as though she knew what she was doing. I believed and understood that she graduated from medical school and held that degree. He said he couldn't recall the name of the school, but that the thought was an international school in the Caribbean. He said he was told Tour had completed a research fellowship at the University of Miami after finishing medical school and met one of her colleagues from the school. I saw hard copies of various degrees and certifications on display at her Empress Health Clinic office and believed that they were real, he said. And for what Guadaviv said, so when he started his business, he reached out and asked Tour for help to build his clinic. Jody represented herself as an integrative medicine doctor who was certified to work in the United States. Rowe said he understood she was not licensed as a medical doctor in Canada, and said that her job was to oversee the clinic from a business standpoint only. Ooh,
interesting. Yeah. Integrative medicine is mostly the incorporation of what amounts to quackery into proper medicine, said Joe Schwartz, a director of McGill University Office for Science and Society and professor of chemistry who works to address medical misinformation. When integrative medicine is practiced by a doctor, it can mean incorporating holistic wellness elements such as yoga, Reiki, and acupuncture into a healthcare regime. When it is practiced by someone who is not a doctor, it amounts to plain quackery, Schwartz said. During Tour's employment at Conscious Mind Labs, the company put out press releases identifying Tour as an MD and a board-certified integrative medicine doctor. The company's website also identified Tour as having a PhD. In its investigation into Tour's credentials, the Thai could not find any evidence that Tour graduated from an accredited medical school, completed a medical residency, or was qualified to practice medicine. Tour is not registered with the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC, a requirement to practice medicine in the province. Tour's double-blind PhD comes from a non-accredited school that grants its degrees to people in as little as a year. In regards to the use of her credentials on our old website, honestly, at the time, I did not know she was not allowed to use these credentials in jurisdictions that she was not licensed or practiced in. And I thought we could use the credentials as she presented them to me from a business standpoint, Guru said. Guru added that Tour was terminated in the first half of 2022 because she wasn't able to execute a building out the clinic model and bring in the appropriate professionals needed for this. He said that he has had no connection to Tour since the spring of 2022. Guru said the company's Conscious Mind Lab website was hijacked by a former business associate around the same time in spring of 2022. The hijacked website was live and listed Tour as the company's chief medical officer, noting her MD, IMD, and PhD until mid-November of 2024, weeks after the provincial election took place. Guru said he has been working to have the site taken down and has even gotten the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC to write a letter to the hosting site saying Tour was not a doctor and should not be represented as one. This letter helped us get the website suspended by a previous hosting provider, he said. But it resurfaced for a time. The resurfacing version of the website replaced Tour's and Gabriel's profile pictures with a Pinocchio and a clown, respectively, and blacked out the large swath of text. Clicking on the Our Clinics tab led to a federal website for reporting fraud. Ketamine, psilocybin, and MDMA are controlled substances in Canada. But the researchers have been working to show the drugs also have therapeutic use. For example, psilocybin can be used to treat severe depression, and a ketamine derivative can help with treatment-resistant depression. Doctors can prescribe this ketamine derivative in Canada. MDMA-assisted psychotherapy has also shown to be potentially helpful in reducing social anxiety in autistic children. Interesting.
It is. Where are we? But researchers?
No, we're at Tour's stance on drugs.
Oh yeah, okay, right there. All right. After joining the BC Conservatives, Tour would occasionally share the party's anti-drug course on her social media, condemning public drug use, critiquing policies designed to reduce overdose in public washrooms, calling for involuntary care, and attending talks about drugs given by Adam Ziebel, National Post columnist, who shares reactionary views on safe supply that have been characterized by academics as contributing to a moral panic, due in part to their over-reliance on anecdotes and anonymous sources. Longtime drug reform activist Dana Larson says he was surprised to learn a conservative MLA had worked with a company involved in psychedelics, considering strong an anti-drug stance held by other politicians in the party. Larson openly sells unregulated cannabis and psychedelics at several storefronts in Vancouver and uses the profits to run anti-drug checking services at several locations in Vancouver. Larson wants the federal government to legalize mushrooms the same way it legalized cannabis. Larson's business and advocacy have been heavily criticized by BC Conservative MLA Eleanor Sturgill and party leader John Rustad. Larson's mushrooms stores have been raided by the Vancouver police twice, but he has not been charged. At the first raid, Larson sent a package containing 1 gram of magic mushrooms and 1 cocoa leaf to every MLA, calling on them to reconsider drug policy. At the time, Rustad told CBC that hard drugs kill people, ruin lives, and destroy our communities. And Sturgill told City News that times are a controlled substance of this type of activity is wrong. To have someone like Tour working with psilocybin and then being allowed to be a member of the Conservatives sounds hypocrisy, Larson said. From the Conservative Party, to one hand, attacking dispensaries like mine attacking mushrooms, and psychedelics being a very anti-drug, but also having people in their inner circle who are relying on about their credentials, maybe to get permits and to advance their careers and stuff. It seems like hypocrisy, even within the party, and I'm not surprised about that. Ooh.
Yeah, he also expressed frustration and with dishonest people overshadowing the hard work being done by drug policy advocates and researchers. This kind of industry is rife with scammers and people wanting to take advantage and get in early so they can profit when changes happen to the drug policy laws, he said. Yeah, and that's the end of the article.
Yeah, that is the end of it. It's a good article, man. And at first I didn't know that she just got like that back in 2022. She got fired, and it's just some hacker fucking with them now.
Yeah. So funny, eh?
Right. But at the same time, it is important to have the right credentials if you're saying you're a doctor.
Yeah, you can't run around telling people you're a doctor if you're not. There's laws against that. Just like you can't run around telling people you're a cop when you're not a cop. Like, you can't do that shit. Just saying.
Right. Okay, this is like Mr. Hobby saying he's a gynecologist because he sticks his hand in a puppet. No, just
yeah.
All
It's
right.
just interesting that came to surface now because of all of the political stuff happening within Canada and the possibility.
Oh,
right. So it's interesting that article is like 3 years old almost, and now we're hearing about it.
Right. Now they're going to throw in the salt. Yeah, I get it. Our next article comes out of NewsNationNow.com, and advocates push for more access to psychedelic treatment in Texas. And this is written by Sam Stark. That's like right next to us.
Yeah. Scientists and legislative activists will meet Tuesday night to discuss the current state of use of psychedelic substances to treat mental health conditions. Over the last decade, the use of psychedelic substances has evolved from taboo to be considered by many a legitimate treatment option for psychiatric disorders. Specifically, many veterans with treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder have increasingly considered these substances to get better. Mother and musician. Oh, that's just some weird. Okay, never mind. Stupid ads. There's definitely a shift in the openness and receptivity of the field of this type of research, said Greg Fonzo, PhD, co-director of McGill Center for Psychedelic Research and Therapy at Dell Medical School. People do undergo this treatment process. Some of them do respond well and have good benefits in terms of symptom reduction and feeling better, Fonzo, who will speak at Tuesday night's event. Fonzo has a couple of studies coming up and running at UT Austin, looking at psilocybin's, the psychoactive compound in magic mushrooms, effect on treatment-resistant depression. He and his team have two more in the works, one looking at psilocybin's effects on postpartum depression, and one exploring LSD for the treatment of generalized anxiety disorder. Texas lawmakers approved legislation in 2021 that allows studies for psychedelic drug treatments for veterans. House Bill 1802 passed with bipartisan support. Brian Hubbard, the Reed Foundation Executive Director of the American Ibogaine Initiative, is hoping the Texas legislature might consider pushing forward in 2025 legislation related to ibogaine, a naturally occurring psychoactive substance shown in some research to be effective in treating post-traumatic stress disorder and addiction. The hope is that the Texas legislature will consider appropriating $50 million out of its $20 billion budget surplus to create a public-private partnership where the state's money could be matched by funds of a drug developer, Hubbard said.
Hubbard recently joined former Texas Governor Rick Perry on Joe Rogan's podcast to discuss the substance and legislative efforts. Perry has been outspoken in support of psychedelic drugs for the treatment of PTSD in veterans. Hubbard said that his team had drafted Ibogaine legislation and is looking for lawmakers to partner with. He hopes legislation can be filed soon. Between the political leadership and the medical and the scientific know-how, there is fabulous opportunity for Texas to lead the nation in his treatment, Hubbard said. Wow, that's interesting. What's happening.
Yeah.
I like that. Other states, a lot of rougher states, I kind of follow what Texas does at times. Because it's a big
interesting because Texas has always been very like anti-drug, very harsh penalties for drug crimes in that part of the states, and here they are at the forefront of psychedelic research for people who are struggling, right? Like, it's pretty cool.
Right, and out of all the states that are screaming for it, this is the one that went first into the research before they changed any laws.
Absolutely. And they're not looking at it just from a dollar signs recreation market. They're actually looking at it from a medical standpoint and how can we make this better, right? So it's kind of neat. They've got those clinical trials happening. We'll see what the outcome of those are.
So our next article comes from the microdose.substacks.com. And this week in psychedelics, Kennedy hearings, U.S. Embassy in Peru and Costa Rica, Ministry of Health, warn against ayahuasca use, propose legislation would change and co-psilocybin programs, plus new state bills, yada, yada, yada. This is Jane A.C.H. No, wait, Jane C. Who?
So it starts with This Week in Psychedelics. Happy Friday and welcome back to the Microdose, an independent journalism newsletter brought to you by the UC Berkeley Center for the Science of Psychedelics. And it goes on to say this week, the U.S. Senate Finance and Health Committees held hearings to consider Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination as the country's Secretary of Health and Human Sciences. Kennedy did not directly mention psychedelics, though he has previously vowed to prioritize psychedelics if confirmed to the post. He did, however, disparage SSRIs from his Finance Committee hearings, saying that members of my family have had much worse time getting off SSRIs than heroin. Across the two hearings, Democrats mainly focused on Kennedy's statement on vaccines, including false claims about COVID-19 and opposing the development of COVID-19 vaccinations. Senator Tina Smith called out a 2023 appearance on Bill Maher's podcast in which Kennedy said antidepressants are causing school shootings. Meanwhile, Kennedy's main opposition from Republicans comes from former President or Vice President Mike Pence, whose political advocacy organization Advancing American Freedom has pledged hundreds of thousands of dollars to oppose Kennedy's nomination. On Monday, the group posting on X calling out Kennedy's support as dangerous health-related conspiracy theories, abortion on demand, and increasing access to psychedelics. The Senate Finance Committee is expected to vote on Kennedy's nomination this week, according to the New York Times. The U.S. Embassy in Peru warns against ayahuasca use, as does the Costa Rica Ministry of Health. Last week, the U.S. Embassy in Peru issued a notice to all citizens visiting Peru recommending they do not ingest or use traditional hallucinogenics, often referred to as ayahuasca or Cambo. Well, ayahuasca and Cambo are two separate things, so I hope they're not trying to lump those all into one. The notice claimed that several citizens had died or experienced severe illness, including mental health episodes after ayahuasca and Cambo use, as well as being sexually assaulted, injured, or robbed while under the influences of these dangerous substances at healing or retreat centers. Over the last year, there has been news reports of a murder at a Peruvian retreat and at least one death at an ayahuasca and Cambo retreat in Australia. But we found no publicly available reports of deaths due to ayahuasca use at Peruvian retreats. The microdose reached out to the U.S. Embassy in Peru for further information, but did not receive a reply. Meanwhile, in Costa Rica, the Costa Rica Ministry of Health is also putting out a warning about the use and advertisement of ayahuasca, reminding people that the DMT it contains is a controlled drug subject to federal regulation. It also warns against unauthorized use of ibogaine and encourages people to avoid the drug and to report users of either drug to health authorities.
Proposed legislation would change Oregon and Colorado's psilocybin programs. So far, Oregon and Colorado are the only two states with state legal psilocybin programs. And this week, representatives in each state have introduced legislation that would affect those programs. In Oregon, the new legislation proposed by the nonprofit Group Healing Advocacy Fund and introduced by Representative Daisha Graber would make changes to the state psilocybin program. Currently, even if licensed psilocybin facilitators have other types of expertise, say they're a doctor or a therapist, they can only act as a facilitator during psilocybin sessions, and they cannot provide medical or psychotherapy services, leaving some professionals unsure whether they can talk about their facilitation work with clients at all. The new bill, House Bill 2387, would protect health professionals from being disciplined by the state's professional regulatory board. It would also require the Oregon Health Authority to keep investigations of complaints confidential, and it also contracts the size of Oregon's psilocybin advisory board from its current 14 to 16 members down to 9. Requires one board seat to be held by a licensed service center operator and another to be held by a licensed facilitator. Finally, the bill also proposes that all psilocybin products contain information and psilocybin content in addition to the psilocybin content to provide more information about the potency of the product. Psilocybin is a prodrug of psilocin, which means that the human body metabolizes the psilocybin into psilocin, which is the active component compound capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier. Because the most psilocybin mushrooms contain psilocin, knowing the quantity of psilocybin alone is not sufficient to predict the strength of a dose. Huh. Wow.
Interesting, eh? But we know not all strains are created equally, just like with cannabis, right? Yeah. In Colorado, state senators have introduced Senate Bill 076, which would prohibit psilocybin manufacturers and other license holders from making or distributing psilocybin gummies, chocolate, or other formulations that includes added flavor or sweetener. According to Westward, the bill was created in collaboration with a nonprofit group, One Chance to Grow Up, whose mission is to protect kids from THC. Representatives from the organization spoke at a Colorado Springs City Council meeting in favor of the city adopting stricter rules governing the state's natural medicine program. In a statement to the microdose, Tasia Poisati, a Colorado State Director of Healing Advocacy Fund, said the Colorado bill was unnecessary given state regulators' comprehensive guardrails for its psilocybin program, and that decreasing product types could cause issues for some clients. There's also documented issues around nausea and sometimes vomiting for people who consume whole or powdered mushrooms. She said, "We are concerned that limiting product types in Colorado would, could cause significant discomfort for those participants, distracting them from the psilocybin experience itself and possibly limiting the efficacy of the therapy. Limiting options would also decrease options to study their effects," she said. "We're better served by allowing a range of options within the supervised therapeutic framework and gathering data on what's most effective, rather than preemptively limiting product types that are safe and may be proven beneficial."
The state of the Connecticut State Representative Josh Elliott introduced House Bill 6380 last week, an incredibly succinct one-sentence bill proposing that the state's general statute be amended to decriminalize the possession of psilocybin. Meanwhile, a group of Rhode Island representatives introduced H5186, a similar bill that exempts possession and home cultivation of psilocybin from the state's controlled substance law and directs the State Department of Health and establish rules for prescribing medical psilocybin should the U.S. Food and Drug approve the bill. Earlier this month, we reported that a city council member in Tacoma proposed a resolution investigation, arrest, and prosecution of people using, possessing, growing, transporting, or distributing entheogenic plants or fungus, the law enforcement priority. Over the last 2 decades, psychedelic research has been the resurgence. In recent years, researchers have found the factors like mindset and physical environment can affect research results. In the new review paper published in Psychedelic Medicine, researchers reviewed experimental procedures from 18 studies. Their report on safety information is conveyed, as well as what expectations may be influenced by the elements like physical environment, for instance, materials that emphasize the potential for transformative mystical type subjective experiences may increase the likelihood that participants will report such mystical type outcomes during the course of their experience. The author writes, those expectations in turn could affect study results, either by enhancing reported benefits or leading to disappointment if certain expectations are not realized. Wow.
Overall, the researchers identified several themes across study material. Unsurprisingly, protocols often touched on physical and biological safety, such as health screenings before the studies, as well as psychological safety and well-being before, during, and after sessions. In these protocols, the researchers also identified practices that could unwittingly introduce expectancies. For example, some sites used religious or spiritual practices like chanting or administering psilocybin in a ceremonial vessel. And some study session rooms used religious or spiritual iconography like mandalas or statues of Buddha, where others received psilocybin in a more conventional medical environment with hospital beds on wheels, vital sign monitor machines, cabinets, and medical supplies and wheelchairs present. The interaction between setting and mindset, the author's note, are ripe for future study. Would participants feel more at ease in a medical looking setting or more on edge? How could that affect study outcomes? as the field of psychedelic research develops standardization and systematic manipulation and measurement of study parameters will hopefully continue to progress. They conclude there is substantial room for improvement in reporting and standardization.
It was good. It was good. I liked it. That was nice.
Absolutely. It's interesting for sure.
It was a summary of what was happening in the week and of psychedelics, and it was nice. Now it is yep. Now it is medication time.
That's right, folks. It's time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors, and then we'll return with more articles Bufo has chosen, making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network. And there's the commercial.
Advertising space available at NOK. Contact us for a rate sheet at NOKNetwork.com.
Discover the treasure trove of flavors at Miss Jolly's Munchie Factory. Satisfy your cravings with our award-winning treats. Follow us on Instagram at Captain Rogers 705. Let Miss Jolly's Munchie Factory lift your spirits. Experience the comforting embrace of our freshly prepared soups and infused cornbread.
Join us for NOK Network monthly specials, 12 months a year. Movie nights. Spotlights on entertainment. And live on location coverage. Stay up to date about upcoming programming by subscribing to NOK Network on Rumble, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Facebook. Check out our webpage at www.noknetwork.com.
Hey, hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyendinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Hold it in, feel it in your ribs.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Check us out in Tyendinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyendinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Tune in daily to NOK Network's diverse podcasting lineup. Ganja News Update, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Tara Simpson and Ron McNabb. Waking Up with the Wayniac, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific with Tombstoner Wayne Cruz from Tombstone, Arizona. Grow 420, Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern with Ron McNabb. Psychedelic Reporters, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Hobbies Puppets and Tara Simpson. Peace, News, and Views, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Sir Stevo and Kim Cooper. Thursdays we have Open Your Eye with Kim Cooper and Tara Simpson, 8 p.m. Eastern. Followed by Thursday Night Vibes at 9:15 p.m. Eastern with Master and Mama Rochi. The IWK 710 Daily Sesh airs 7 nights a week with our rotating joint hosts nightly at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in to all the podcasting on NOK Network.
Dudettes, enjoy the show, man.
And we're back from our medication session live here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. Okay, our next article. Oops. Peter's slowing down here for a second. It was so nice to me so far. Oh, here it is. All right, the next article comes from Article. And I like this one. This is a good article. It was from crowdline.com from Just Say No to Maybe So, Washington state legislation reconsiders legalizing psychedelics. And this was written by Tim Klauser.
Yeah, so the potential legalization of magic mushrooms is heading to Olympia next week as state lawmakers prepare to hear testimony on 2 bills that could change the landscape of mental health treatment. State legislators have attempted to model a program based on Oregon's Psilocybin Services Act for the past few years. While Beaver State residents have passed a measure in 2020, the Evergreen State has failed to get the ball rolling on its side of the Columbia River since 2022. Oregon approved legalized supervision of psilocybin for adults 21 or older. The state program allows trained facilitators to administer the substance under controlled settings. Senator Jesse Solomon stated the movement in Olympia in 2022, started the movement, in Olympia in 2022 and hasn't given up since. He proposed Senate Bill 5201 this year, which picked up bipartisan co-sponsors, and they're also a nearly identical companion to House Bill 1433 to increase the chances of passing. Many individuals report having profound experiences after taking psychedelic substances, creating lasting impressions and inspiring positive changes in their lives, according to SB 5201 and HB 1433. The proposal adds the clinical trials have shown the substance to be promising practice for the treatment conditions of conditions such as substance use disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, treatment-resistant depression, obsessive-compulsive disorders, and other serious maladies. According to the bill, the potential effect is much more significant than mainstream pharmaceutical and clinical interventions obtained with fewer side effects and much smaller long-term costs. Colorado set out on a path similar to Oregon in 2023 after voters approved a ballot measure the year prior. Like marijuana, psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms, are still classified as Schedule I substance by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration.
If approved, SB 5201 and HB 1433 would both legalize the facilitated use of psilocybin and psilocin, another illegal hallucinogens, and psychedelic mushrooms. Starting in 2030, both could also add other substances if recommended by the proposed Washington Psychedelic Substance Board. Upon approval, the following would join the program: dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, which is the active ingredient of ayahuasca; ibogaine, which studies to show help treat opioid addiction view a found in psychedelic toads. 3, 4, methylmethamphetamine, also known as MDMA, ecstasy, or Molly, which research shows to treat post-traumatic stress, and mescaline, which is found in peyote, though both bills explicitly exclude peyote. Huh? Oh, so it has mescaline, but not peyote. Okay. According to a fiscal note for Salomon's 2022 proposal, the iteration would have cost at least $15.1 million to stand up for the first 4 years. A fiscal note for the current proposal isn't available yet, so it's unclear how much that may have increased since. If approved, the 2025 proposals would allow for a 2-year developmental phase before the state starts handing out licenses in 2027. Facilitated use would occur at licensed centers, healthcare facilities, a client's residence with special approval, or other locations under certain conditions. Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize and regulate the use of psilocybin. Colorado followed similarly, with the cities of Oakland and Santa Cruz in California decriminalizing the substance in 2019 and 2020. Washington, D.C., as well as other cities, Somersville, Cambridge, and Northampton in Massachusetts, and Detroit, Michigan, and Seattle have also done so since. The legislature enacts this act for a threefold purpose. A, to provide adults in Washington with a regulated, safe means of accessing psychedelic substances. B, to provide a safe harbor for health professionals from adverse licensure action within Washington state based on federal prohibitions. And C, to advance the knowledge about the risks and benefits of the use of psychedelic substances by facilitating research opportunities according to the 2025 proposal. The House Healthcare and Wellness Committee will host a public hearing over House Bill 1433 on February 5th, with the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee holding another over SB 5201 on the following day.
Wow, so 2 bills are going on in Washington.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is real cool. And they're right. It's right next to Idaho and Oregon. And Idaho doesn't have one, but Oregon has a booming mushroom industry. Although now I think a lot of cities are recanting some of it, as we've read.
Well, yeah, because a lot of them opened all these like actual treatment facilities, and the demand isn't there when people don't have $3 to $5 grand and a weekend so to go, right? Like it's not for everyone to do it that way. Some people need a more realistic, can get a prescription from the doctor, even go get their capsules or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it has to be more accessible for those who don't have extravagant amounts of money to travel to a healing center and do this whole big thing, right?
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Where they're kind of in their areas now backpedaling because they're closing a lot of those facilities because the demand isn't there. And it's not that the demand for this substance isn't there, it's the demand money-wise for people isn't there. They don't have that kind of money to just spend right now.
And that's what's got to get equalized. I mean, a lot of healthcare people can't afford their regular healthcare, let alone like what healthcare for natural medicines costs as well.
Right.
And we're just starting to see different practices in yoga and mental health and meditation places be added on insurances. So I mean, it's going to be a fight as this keeps on going, and people have the right to natural medicines. So that being said, Bufos wants you to be aware how 2025, the state-by-state, bill-by-bill analysis from Psychedelic Alpha that just got released. So if you're living in the United States, this is a state-by-state, bill-by-bill analysis, January 31 by the whole news, like the so
Yeah, since the start of the 2025 legislative session, more than 3 dozen psychedelic related bills have been introduced across more than a dozen states. The burst of momentum will be a welcome sight to many psychedelic advocates, especially after a very challenging 2024 that saw policy reform efforts plateau. Last year was also punctuated by prominent failures like Massachusetts Question 4 and more localities opting out of Oregon's state-regulated psychedelics program. As the year came to a close, then there was a sense of lethargy among certain corners of psychedelic policy reform movement. But 2025 is off to a roaring start, unparalleled, even start with lawmakers, corporate interests, and grassroots advocates alike focused on achieving reforms at the state level, regardless of what new administration might bring on the federal forefront. Here we parse through an influx of new bills. First, Psychedelic Alpha editor Josh Hardman provides a high-level thematic overview of the fresh set of bills. Then Jack Gorson runs through each bill one by one in this article. Oh, this might be a long article.
Well, and that's. Do you want to just skim it, and then they can go to Psychedelic Alpha and read them more thoroughly, or do you just want to read it?
Maybe we can just kind of skim through because, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty long one. It gets pretty in depth.
Okay.
Yeah. So, words by Josh Hartman. Before we dive into Jack Gorson's state-by-state bill, high-level overview of the types of bill introduced this session. Okay, so ibogaine research in Washington. Outside the glut of psilocybin specific bills, the only other proposed law to limit itself to one psychedelic was Washington HB 5204, which calls for a study of ibogaine assisted therapy in adults with opioid use disorder to be conducted via the University of Washington and hosted by a licensed clinic in Mexico. That's pretty cool because we don't hear a lot about ibogaine being pushed forward. I mean, we hear about the LSD, mushrooms, ketamine, but the ibogaine, we know that it is working for especially opioid addiction.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Other bills cover various psychedelics. So there's a bunch of bills. It looks like they're looking at everything from DMT, ibogaine, mescaline, psilocybin, and psilocybin as being part of those bills. And I think that's Washington as well.
Yeah. Lawmakers continue push for state-regulated psychedelic programs. And it looks like Washington, Massachusetts has one, Illinois has one, Washington has one, proposing the creation of Oregon, Colorado state-regulated programs. Decriminalization on the agenda. Other bills look to decriminalize the use of certain psychedelics. Further trigger bills introduce the bill's psychedelic reschedule drugs at the state level upon FDA rescheduling. Colorado, Virginia, you got Iowa and Rhode Island. To some extent, Rhode Island. We wrote some of the bills which are supported by psilocybin. I almost think the skim state down here, like the dive into it is a little more, and read a little bit of some of that.
Yeah, the state by state. Following a seamlessly momentumous stalling year for psychedelic advocates and industry leaders alike in 2024, few experts could have predicted the sheer volume of psychedelic-related news stories that have both stoked optimism and stirred controversy thus far in the year 2025. So far this year, mainstream disclosure surrounding psychedelics has been dominated by RFK Jr.'s controversial nomination for Health and Human Services Secretary, while insider headlines have included outcry over 11th hour alterations to the psychedelic program in Colorado and a stunning $1 million backdrop coup attempt at Lycos Therapeutics, bankrolled by billionaire tech investor and Elon Musk associate Antonia Gracias. Chaotic political occurrences were certainly expected in the earliest days of the Trump 2.0 administration in Washington, D.C., which some may argue has been to benefit the state-level psychedelic policy stakeholders seeking to bring forth a substantive legislative proposal while minimizing public misperception during this tenuous time for drug policy reform efforts at large here in the U.S. On the 1st of January, Minnesota State-appointed Psychedelic Task Force released its long-awaited report and recommendations for psychedelic policy reforms, the results of which definitely did not disappoint advocates. A majority of the task force members formally recommended that the state legislature give serious consideration to decriminalizing psilocybin for personal use and possession, and to establish a state-funded, regulated psychedelic therapy program for prospective patients with qualifying conditions. Elsewhere in the American West, a comparably styled psychedelic task force is Politically Purple Nevada has been assembled to conduct similar research and provide their own recommendations to state lawmakers. But most surprising of all, for 2025's earliest political contributions to psychedelics has been the explosion of state-level psychedelic-related legislative proposals this month. As of publication, the total number of psychedelic-related bills filed at the state level stands at 38 across 14 states. Wow.
Oh my God. Yeah, Massachusetts, in spite of the failure of Massachusetts' now defunct dual psychedelics decriminalization regulated access ballot initiative, formerly known as the Yes on 4 campaign, grassroots psychedelic supporters from around the Bay State hit the ground running to the new year, work hand in hand with a politically diverse group of state lawmakers to file a national record 12 bills related to psychedelics in some form. As noted by Mass Healing co-founder, a former Yes on 4 community engagement coordinator, Jamie Amori, post-election polling found that over half of voters expressed support for removing criminal penalties for personal use of these substances, and roughly 2/3 support legalization of therapeutic access. Potential voter remorse aside, the results of a post-election survey or two were certainly not guaranteed to inspire serious interest for state legislatures, especially following the $8 million catastrophe that was the Yes on 4 campaign's demise. That only makes the record number of bills submitted before our state's deadline, and surprisingly, to political power players both within and beyond the psychedelic advocacy bubble. Most noteworthy and worth keeping an eye on amongst the 12 bills filed by Bay State legislators before the state's filing deadline on January 17th are 3 different psychedelic pilot programs introduced by multiple prominent state legislators from distinctly varied political backgrounds. While each pilot program proposed is similarly structured, at first glance, upon further review and comparison, the language in each bill provides key insights into the involvement or their lack of prominent grassroots advocates in drafting various legislative proposals. HD 4017, written in coordination with former yes or no Jean Maury and Grant Moore, alongside prominent question for voluntary spokesperson U.S. veteran CJ LaConte. HD 4107 or 4017's particular pilot program model would create the rules and regulation necessary for the operation of therapeutic psilocybin program center, including licensure requirements and training standards for entities that were medical professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists seek to obtain a psilocybin facilitator license. Oh wow, this was a nice article. If you want to continue more, log in or join the PA.
Yeah, so lots happening down there in the States with psychedelic and legislatures, eh?
No, and it's pointed out. It was pointed out a lot today in a lot of the articles that a lot of this is having to do with industries wanting to get into it. We covered some of that last week of post like billions that are projected in this whole therapy, psychedelic, and natural reform, and a lot of it was just summarized right there. That because of all the no's last year, all the preparations, so they don't get their dicks kicked in, basically, from a mushroom's mouth, they're going to be able to now come more prepared to these boards and FDAs and be like, okay, now this is what the fuck's going on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's all the research that's been done, and now they're actually taking a look at this at different levels down there. So we'll see what happens, especially with Washington seems to be a big hotspot right now for some bills.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to the next, I think the next 6 months are going to be fun for our job, at least.
Yeah. Well, and down there for sure. I mean, there's way more happening in the States with this than there seems to be in Canada right now. So very interesting. We'll see if Canada follows suit.
Well, but you guys are facing a whole legislature change. So, I mean, you guys might, as you guys fill in different seats, your whole process might be almost following suit.
Maybe, yeah. Once we get a new federal leader and we have an election and parties change, maybe, who knows? It's hard to say, but that sometimes slows everything down too, right? So yeah, we'll see.
Hey, so thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network, and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network, the Rumble, and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
We hope you've enjoyed your update today on mainstream coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint host, Terry Simpson, and to Bufo Alvarius for choosing the stories. And to you, our listeners, and for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. So let's hear from Dead Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out. Woo! Good night.
Bye.
Looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me.